If Jesus loves me now, can he save my little sermon somehow?
Blood harmony is a thing they talk about in music, where if you're siblings, you sing differently together. You know, it's the harmony of you have the same blood. So when you sing together, it's a special thing. And so I thought, man, that's a great title for a record. One of the things that became clear to me as we were in pandemic and in lockdown and all that stuff was how much I missed my family. That's on the East Coast, and with Tim sort of being the tip of that spear, you know, like Tim's the sibling I get to spend the most time with. We have three sisters, and but Tim and I work together and spend an enormous amount of time together, and this was the longest amount of time we hadn't seen each other, you know, and it was just looking abundantly clear that was just going to go on and on and on. And then my nuclear family that has been growing, you know, my wife and my twins became just such this guiding light for me. This was like my new mission and my new passion, and so those things were just going on for me as a human. So I thought, hey, Blood Harmony would be such a great title for an album, because that's what Tim and I do. And I thought, okay, but how do I don't want to write all the songs about that. So when we started to write, what we did was, we knew we wanted to get back to work, and we were sort of like looking at the layout of the year and pandemic and all that stuff. We're like, well, we probably can't really get back to work till the fall of 2021 at the earliest. And in order to do that, you know, we have to write songs and record them in the spring. And it all seemed like a pipe dream, because by New Year's Eve of 2020, I was like, I had a lot of song ideas, but I didn't have songs. Tim and I made this commitment. It was called Pencils Down Friday. So we would get together on Monday and we'd both pick an idea that we had. And we demanded, I'd read the Jeff Tweedy How to Write One Song book. I'd read Questlove's book. There was a couple other like pivotal creative books that I had read and was like getting pumped to make records, you know, like to make songs. And so we held ourselves to this Pencils Down Friday. You have to have a singable song by Friday, and we'll work on it each day. And by Friday, there has to be something that I could play for someone.
It could be verse, chorus, and you could have shitty lyrics, but you had to have lyrics. It couldn't just be, you know, if you know, it goes like that. It has to be a singable thing that you could go to a campfire and have a song.
And so we demoed them, and then the floodgates kind of opened. I was like culling through old voice notes and lyric ideas, and the electricity through that Zoom was there. We were like excited about songwriting. By March, we had 16 songs or something. And once you get your muscles back at it, it goes faster. You know, like there was a sort of like there was just a mojo that was working for us, and we were texting all week when we weren't working. Well, what about this? What about that? And it was really fun. And suddenly, like, the whiteboard filled up. We started to look at what I had for this record, and the Blood Harmony theme started to work. You know, it was like, oh, I am singing about, you know, family and my children, and just the ties that bind humans. You know, it's not just about my nuclear family by any stretch, but like what ties us together. What are some hopeful human stories that like we all have blood harmony. If we all sing together, it makes a nice sound, you know, and I think like that was sort of what started to guide the selections of songs that we brought into here, because there's tons of songs that didn't make it, mostly because of the theme was sort of different on those.
Hello?
Hey, what's up, Will?
We were talking about producers and talking about people to make the record with and where to do it, and Alex, who had been our booking agent, just organically became really involved in our process beyond booking agent. And I said, oh man, I think Alex could manage. So we did the Patty Patty record, the covers thing with Patty Griffin and Patty Costello songs, and that worked really well. And Alex was steering that ship from a management perspective, and so this like trust was developing. And he was like, "Look, I think you should make a record in Nashville. First of all, second of all, I think you should make a record where Will Hoge produces." And I initially was like, I don't know, you know, is he a producer? And he's like, yeah, he's produced his own records, he's produced these records. And I started to listen. I'm like, wow, these sound good. And he has over the years said like you and Will would get along really well. You have a similar kind of outlook. And so we jumped on a Zoom call, and you know, it's hard not to fall in love with Will Hoge. He's a beautiful man, and he's charming, and he's so smart. And musically, our touchstones are pretty much the same. So it took one call, and I was like, I want to work with that guy. And it wasn't even so much that he knows all these incredible players that like I am in awe of.
Will did such a great job of building a team. You know, as like a GM of a basketball team, kind of, where you're like, you know, the last dance.
He had a concept of like what this could be. You know, he was like, well, you know, you're a rock guy, but you're a songwriter. And so we need to honor those two disciplines. And I can do that. That's what I do. And so that was a thrill. I've been being nudged by various people to come to Nashville for 7 years or something. And for whatever reason, my hesitation, I think, was just based in, well, I'm from Philadelphia. I'm not a Southern guy. I don't know. It would, I didn't want to come here and put on like a 10-gallon hat and pretend I was a country singer. Or even Americana is like, I don't even know kind of what that is. I mean, I know what people associate with it. But I don't want to front, you know, I don't want to come here and adopt a persona or something. And so Nashville felt like I was going to come down here and people were going to push me to do things that were uncomfortable or foreign. And I wouldn't want the fans to feel like I was trying to get on the country radio or something. I guess I didn't really understand what the culture of Nashville was. And then in 2018, I came here I had a show at the Bluebird, and it was sold out, and there was all these lovely people that worked at publishing places and performing rights organizations and managers and stuff that were all really sweet. They were like kind people and warm and encouraging, and I just was kind of like, well, that show was really special, and I got to play the Bluebird, you know, I know what that is, and for song makers, that's like a mecca. And so to play there and have it be full and have like this really warm welcome, I ended up writing with my friend Heather Morgan on that trip, who's like a big deal songwriter here, you know, and I just felt the vibe organically. That trip, I thought, okay, I think I get what's going on here. I should come back and maybe I can write some more with different people. And I don't know about making a record, but yeah, I started to warm to the idea. And then as this song batch emerged, it became clear that okay, well, I'm doing something slightly different from what I've done in the past. There's more acoustic material. There's more. The songs are strong, and they're some of the strongest songs that we've made, I thought, and I really wanted to make sure that was out front, the song, and the vocal, you know, and it just seemed like there was a lot of excitement from Nashville, from various people I know here, for what we're doing. And so again, it was kind of organic. I probably waited too long, and then we got here and it was like the red carpet rolled out. We were in Sound Emporium. The first day was like what you dream about when you're a kid, what record making is like, because it still exists here. In Los Angeles, it's mostly, you know, it's down to just a few studios, and I made my second record at a legendary studio that they turned into condos after we made the record. Here in Nashville, the axis around which everything is pivoting is music, and that is incredible. It's such a welcoming place for songs and musicians. I'm like, okay, I get it. I absolutely get it. And you can make the music you want to make. Like with this group of people, there was no like, let's make it country. Everyone was just like, let's just make the songs the focal point, and what do you want to do? And that was like, this is the way to do it. So it felt like a dream, and it felt like something you would see in a magazine when you were a kid. Like that's how they make records. That kind of has fallen off most other places, but it still happens here.
The only other real person I even know of in Nashville is that Bukovac guy.
Well, so the next thing I was going to say is where I'd really like to bring Tom in, Bukovac, is for some acoustic stuff.
Oh, shit. Oh, you know this guy.
Oh, yeah. I was the first, actually, not to sound weird, the first session he ever did in Nashville was on a record for me.
No,
he was,
when the band is playing, which would be chorus 2 and 3, not so much chorus 1, but we'll play this riff, 6, 4, and then walk down.
Seeing that all happen with our songs was so cool. So you're just like, these guys know exactly what they're doing. Like, and seeing it like, okay, how's this feel? No, we're thinking more of like a little bit closer to The Cure, a little closer to this, or whatever the reference point is, and then to see it like that shift take place in 5 seconds is pretty, like, wow.
So there was a little bit of walking in there and being like, am I supposed to be here? Like a little imposter syndrome, a little like, right away we started working on Hanalate first.
I mean, better tempo? Do you have
that
more
feels,
still?
That feels really good. I think if we go any faster, we could lose the lushness.
And I think if...
And it just, what was coming out of the speakers was like, it was wild. I mean, I couldn't believe how lush and beautiful they were making the song.
It's in our brains for these months leading up to hear that. Like, it was just such an awesome experience. It was magic.
Everybody was jumping around and excited. This was like 2 hours into the first day.
The control room vibe was like, show the song. Tom takes down notes. Tom Bukovac is writing up his notes. He writes down the chart after one listen, makes copies, takes it out onto the floor, and everybody just plays the song.
A dear friend of mine, Andrew Leckel, who I made Devour with, turned me on to Tom and said, you gotta see this guy. He started a YouTube thing. He's a ripping guitar player. He's got a great personality, and he's doing these YouTube videos. And I don't know about the session world. This is all new to me. But I watched it and I thought, oh, this is great, and then a few other friends who are super into guitar began, like my friend Matt Hawk from The Explosion and Space Cadet, he got super into it and was like, hey, you know who this Tom Bukovac guy is? And I said, yeah. It sort of just made its way around the music community to like check out these guitar videos. And, with the proofs in the pudding, he's like on his iPhone and sounds like incredible. And he's got all these interesting takes on guitar and stuff. So I just filed it away and thought, oh, here's another thing I got sent about YouTube. And then when we were putting together the players list with Will, he was like, are you familiar with this guy Tom Bukovac? And I was like, yeah, he's an old friend of mine. He'll play on it. And I was like, what? Really? And he was just so fun to be around. He's got this like insane understanding of songs. Like he can listen to your song and write the whole thing out in real time. He doesn't really ever go like, what's that part again? He's got it all charted in real time and then knows it probably better than you do and goes in and then directs the band. It's incredible to watch this guy work.
I think it's just electronic. It's something, and you can click it on.
Wow. Sadler, I was surprised at that he wanted to do it only because, he's in the biggest band that does this thing that there is right now. Jason Isbell and the 400 unit is like this massive, successful, like songwriting juggernaut kind of band. And he was probably the MVP in terms of the vibe, you know. First of all, he can play his ass off, and he loves to rock. He loves to make solos, and he can just rip. And he and Bukovac had never played on the same record, so that was like a certain alchemy that happened right away. And he's truly a great player, and then also just in terms of keeping the vibe fun and light, and silly, and playful, he was just pivotal.
Because I did like a quote tweet this morning. Somebody said something about Chick-fil-A. It was a Tennessean was like, Chick-fil-A is running out of sauce. They're going to be putting maximum. And I was like, I guess I'm going to fill up my gas cans with Polynesian sauce too.
But yeah, Sadler, I mean, and just the guitar playing. I mean, good Lord. He can play in every idiom or whatever, you know, if you say. It was interesting because to some degree, with Chris Powell being more from country, playing with Brandy, he's much more from a country kind of discipline. And then Garry is this older rock and roll guy. Sadler was kind of the link between, like, you know, he's more my age too, so he knew all of the touchstones that some of those guys didn't even know, and he could sort of, I mean, Tom Petty being sort of the guiding light that everybody knew, but he knew, you know, modern rock and sound, you know, all the stuff that we came up on in the 90s and the early 2000s. Sadler kind of knew more than anybody else, so he could sort of shine that out to the band and get us turned in some instances where, like, we would have gone down a road that wouldn't have made sense for the song. So he was pivotal. Sadler is, he's incredible. So Billy, I didn't know Billy. I knew that he played with Eric Church, who I'm not that familiar with. Billy, I just wish we could steal him. He knows he was similar to Sadler in that he is a little younger, and so he could play all of the country style piano and B3. He's awesome at. He can do all the stuff that would allow him to work in Nashville, but he also understands, you know, where we're coming from in terms of, you know, he understands punk rock, he understands indie rock, he understands how all those textures kind of create sonic landscapes. And then Mike Webb came in on the third day because Billy had a conflict, and Mike was just a monster player. You know, he knew exactly what to add to the songs that we cut with him. I mean, he can play the shit out of all of it. He has more of that older school rock and country kind of understanding of songs, and knew exactly what to put into the songs.
It's right on the beach.
Yeah,
it's right on the beach.
Playing with Garry Tallent is one of those things that you pinch yourself. I just would never have imagined doing that 5 or 10 or 15, and certainly not 30 years ago. This guy played all of the shows with Bruce Springsteen, and here he was with a couple of gig bags, like 4 gig bags with basses in them, and he just walks up. What key is it in? Oh, this is a good one. You know, it was just incredible. I can't quite wrap my head around it even now, and it happened. So there's Garry and that sort of incredible history with, you know, being Bruce Springsteen's bass player. But to some degree, and I said this to Chris early on, I said, look, man, you got to understand, like, the older I get, the less I find albums all the way through that, like, create an emotional response in me and, like, change my life. Like, for instance, like, the Hold Steady's Boys and Girls in America was when I was maybe 28 or 9 or 30, I don't know, somewhere in there, and I hadn't had that feeling in a while where I heard a record and was like, whoa, okay, everything's changing in my mind about how I think about music. And that happened in 2018 for me with By the Way I Forgive You by Brandi Carlile, and he played drums on it. So I told him as much. I said, look, man, just like full disclosure, we were on a European tour when I got that record, and I would crawl into my bunk on the bus and I would look forward to getting into my bunk and listening to that album, because I would listen to it on loop through the night and study it, and I just was so blown away. We started to cover Hold Out Your Hand, and he was like, oh cool. He was really sweet about it. And you know, she's just one of those singers like Patty Griffin who, when she opens up her mouth, all the hairs on my neck stand up, and I'm just like emotionally engaged right away. You know, it's hard not to cry listening to her sing. And so when we knew Chris Powell was going to play drums, it was nerve-wracking, because like he was a part of the record by this artist who's like one of the artists for me. And he brought such skill, and he's a drummer who wants the lyric sheet, which is incredible. You know, he knows that he's playing songs, and so many drummers play drums. He plays songs, and he knows that, and so he's responding to that emotional arc of the song and how it's put together and all that stuff. And he just was every bit of the consummate professional. I mean, he was incredible, and we had a rapport pretty quickly, like a friendly, fun rapport. He knows all the stuff about country that I know nothing about. You know, he can play all of that, you know, halftime country, and how do you want it? There were questions he had for us. Well, how do you want it? Do you want it like this or like that? Like Waylon or like, and I'm like, I don't know. You know, so Will sort of had to translate some of that. But yeah, we got on really well, and he was really gracious about my Brandy fandom. The song I'm most excited about on the record was one that shouldn't have made it. We got towards the end, and Will was like, we're good, we don't need any more songs. And I had on my whiteboard this idea just that said Northstar, because my wife and I have said that, like when the kids came along, like it resets your Northstar. You have a whole different way of looking at the world, etc. And that was on the whiteboard, just that. And I thought, man, I really kind of want that to be in the mix here, but Will says we're good, and we're kind of out of the writing thing now. I'm into this rehearsing thing. But I texted Tim, and I was like, can we just try to write Northstar? Like, what are you doing tomorrow? And he was like, oh, yeah. And it just came to life.
On stormy seas, my stomach would squeeze when the waves would come crash on the deck. Two shaky knees, 3 sheets to the breeze. I ripped off the sails in the wreck. I had no North Star. I figured all the moves would make good scars, like a firefly stuck in a mason jar. A slave to my craving, like nothing could save me.
I didn't have a melody, I didn't have anything, and we just sat down kind of with a blank slate, and that song poured out. And it's the song I'm most excited about because it's about my kids. And it wasn't supposed to happen. It could still be sitting on that whiteboard. It was funny because Will texted, all right guys, we're in the home stretch here. You're coming in on Saturday night, and I want you to just hang out with your kids and your dog and your wives and eat some nice food, and don't worry about music. And at that point we had the song mostly done, and I was like, or we wrote another song. You know, it's like something that when I'm gone my kids will have. You know, that's a hard song to write, and you know, to sit down and try to write that is hard, but I think for whatever reason it sort of just came through, and Tim was kind of there to keep it on track. You know, it was pretty cool. It was like channeling.
What?
Oh my God! The song here now we're jumping into the 12th iteration. Let's see how many songs we can write.
We were wild in the Jersey heat. We had hate, jealousy on repeat. We went one,
Sandy Sheets was a melody that Tim had for that verse.
I had that Ladder to the Clouds bit for a while, and it was one that we tried to junkyard a couple times, so it's like, does this chorus work on it? I don't know. Does this chorus work on it? Not really. I've got a chorus that doesn't have a verse. This is a verse that we don't have a chorus for. Where's the chorus? What's the chorus? Tried all different kinds of choruses. Tried to make one up on the spot. Tried to use one that was laying around. And finally, it came together, and the whole premise, it started off way more edgy.
You found yourself a ladder to the clouds. You never want to come back down because it's easy. That was the original way that the lyric went. And, you know, we wrote a version about a rock star that we know that, you know, it was a little too biting. It was a little, like, we got it done, and it was good. It was solid, I guess, but I didn't care. I was like, well, I don't care about, like, critiquing this famous person. Like, who cares? I said, I think we gotta just turn this thing on its head and go romantic, which is what we did with Fireflies on the last record. We had a version of that was a little more biting and sarcastic, and I said, I think we just need to lean into the romance of life.
The goal was, how do we take this and do what people are used to us doing, like in the vein of a We Could Be Kings or something like this, but add the nostalgia and the little bit of pixie dust that we did with the song Fireflies on Kick. So how do we take, like, more of a rocker, because Fireflies is definitely not a rocker, so how do we take that pixie dust and sprinkle it on a rock song?
And Sandy Sheets emerged once we made that turn. It was like, once we turned it to, like, you were like a ladder to the clouds, I never want to come back down. It was like, okay, well, this is like, we've all been in love, and you know, and I sort of felt in that melody there was some kind of like Jersey Shore, listening to The Cure, melancholy thing. And once we ran down that road and had the Hey Jealousy thing, you know, you had Hey Jealousy on repeat, we were falling in love under the boardwalk, then it started to click, and then the band made that one into something beyond our wildest dreams. You know, they all clicked in. The funny thing was, we were sitting in the control room talking about the approach to the song, and I said, well, just think about listening to The Cure on your Walkman late at night on the Jersey Shore boardwalk. And, you know, everyone's like, okay, you know, like, that's sort of our approach. And it took a few passes out in the control room for the band to gel. And Garry Tallent, we overheard him out there. He goes, well, I've never heard The Cure, if I'm honest. He was like, you know, I was busy in the 80s. And
Let me remember you when it was easy.
in quarantine, one of the things I wanted to do was get organized, get my musical and lyrical ideas that were like in tons of notes and voice notes, and it was just a mess. Going all the way back to Loved Ones, like 2005, there's hundreds of songs and song ideas that I needed to organize. So I just got to work and spent about an hour a day, like, okay, this one's good, and go back to that one and finish that one. And Hanalei, the verse was from, I think it was probably about 2007.
Keep the click in, right? I'll take it out of here, but keep it in their ears. Yeah.
Built forever home, forever ain't true.
That's right.
On this dinosaur island of green, the sky's always blue. But now we could stay far from the power line, But now we could lay like a sand cook our basking in the sun. And Hannah Lee, we could stay, we could sell anything that isn't nailed down.
Yeah, that little melody and Sunset Just Came and Then Went, Now a Fingernail Moon. I think that was in the voice note. I don't remember exactly what parts of it, but that melody and then another voice note, or maybe it was just like, hey, write about the feeling in Hawaii that you get where you don't want to leave, you know, when you're on vacation and you're like, what if we just sold everything and lived in a hut on the beach, and if we got washed out to sea, then we were in Hawaii, you know, like that feeling everybody gets when they're there, like maybe we don't want to go back.
When he brought that melody in, it was like, it was kind of cool for me, because that was like, I haven't heard you do a melody like that. Like that's a new melodic thing, and I was like, this is kind of like something more that I would come up with. So the fact that you came up, like, I was like, oh, this is wild. Like you've inspired so much of my my formula and all this. So I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like this is new and fresh and exciting, and I feel like there's almost a little pinch of my like way that isn't. So that was a cool one.
That, although I'm starting to think about your idea and think, is it better to do like a holy holy thing with that, either hold tight or even I'll buy you the sky. I'll buy you the sky on the ocean tide. I'll buy you the sky.
That could be cool too, a build.
Or something like, I don't know if we need another big movement, like another, I don't know. I'm wondering about that middle eight.
Plagiarist was a melody that came to me when I was driving down the 101 to my mother-in-law's house. Between Santa Barbara and Carpinteria, where they live, is about the most beautiful bit of coastline, other than maybe Big Sur, in the country. You know, it's just, you're looking out at the ocean and oh my God, it's beautiful. You got mountains to your left. And sometimes just melodies come to me when I'm driving or doing something sort of mindless, and that Meet Me Later, We'll Be Heading Southbound was just, I was heading southbound on the 101, I don't know, and I just threw it into the voicemail, and then I think Plagiarist was an idea that, you know, the idea of I'll Be Your Plagiarist was some other thing from my lyric file.
Yeah. Hold A. I'll buy you the sky on the ocean side. Yeah, I see what you're doing. You're doing a repeat. I'll be your plagiarist. I'm taking it and calling it mine. I'll be your plagiarist. $1 off the store. I'll be your. And so I think oftentimes you come up with bad ideas when you don't know how to solve a problem, and that's kind of what we were exploring. Like, I'll be your plagiarist. I'll take that, call it mine. It's a petty crime, and I'll get you what you want, get you what we want. And that's kind of, I thought that was an interesting premise for like a love song. You know, it's not quite a love song. It's a little bit of a, let's do a quick petty crime. We'll get away with something. And it just is sort of how I view capitalism or something. Like, it's all a little bit of a crime, but how the hell else are we going to get to stay here by the ocean? You know, it's so I don't know. It's definitely steeped in some weird working class guilt.
Garry is a song that was it was a song that was, it's funny because like it's just so quirky and strange that the song is called Garry. we've got an uncle called Garry, and like we've got like there's just something about it that I love, because it's like you get to that chorus and it's like so weird, so weird, so weird, and then like the universality or whatever the word is in the chorus, it's like, oh cool, whoa.
I was touring a couple of years ago. The name Garry came up as a laugh. Everybody was surprised that a friend of ours had named their kid Garry, and because I mean, in this day and age, it seems strange to have a tiny baby and name him Garry, you know. So there was this sort of laugh about it on a bus I was on, and it sort of kept coming up. It was like this, like we'd text each other, and the idea was like to replace a famous Harry or a famous Larry with the name Garry. So I don't know, what would it be? It would be Garry David would be the assistant to Larry David who gets him coffee or whatever. So there's this like silly joke going around about the name Garry, and it reminded me that there was this kid that I was friends with as a boy, and it kind of turned at some point in our relationship. You know, in school he sort of wasn't cool. Like I got along with him well outside of school, and then at some point it became clear that like other kids in the class thought he wasn't cool, and I didn't do the thing I wish I would have done, which was like stick up for him and been like an advocate for him because he was a friend. And then this kid just had a rough go. You know, he was one of those kids who had a rough go throughout school, and I never have felt good about it. You know, I hate this truth. You know, that he was my friend, and then he sort of got bullied, and I sort of participated in it, and it's bugged me for my whole life. It's a regret. Kindness and compassion are the most punk rock things you can attribute to this world. Like, this world is tough, and if you can dole out some love to somebody who's hurting and just give them a break, you're doing an enormous kindness to that person, likely, especially when the rest of the group is piling on. And I just wish I would have done that.
Sorry for me now. It's like a cup of cold coffee. It's bitter and old, a little too late. But I'm trying to make it right. The shit that we put on your plate.
Dave's perspective on that was really, I thought, was wild, and also like wild and quirky enough that you're like, at points you're like, is this gonna work? But it totally did, especially when that chorus came. You're like, oh yeah, this makes perfect sense.
Oh, this is the night.
All right, ready?
Yeah, that's how this is all my mandolin skills.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Surfboard was like our jump off point. I was doing some co-writing early in quarantine just to kind of like try some new things. I wrote a couple songs with Brian Fallon. I wrote a couple songs with Brian Koppelman, and you know, so two totally different people. And I was getting into the idea of like, oh, like let's write together. And so I called Heather Morgan, who we had written a song with in 2018 when I first was, you know, in Nashville. Like I referenced that being in Nashville in 18, and we had a great time writing a song. So I reached out to her and was like, hey, do you want to try another one? And didn't prepare for the meet because we have a pretty friendly rapport. And so we're talking and catching up on the Zoom, and then I was like, hey, I've got this melody. I've got actually a lot of this put together, but I don't know exactly what the chorus lyric conceit is. And she said, okay, well, show me what you got. And this was like a half hour into our writing meeting, you know, like we decided to actually start working. And so I sang her what I had at the time. I don't remember what it was. And I said, well, what about this idea, dear Lord, I need a surfboard? And she was like, oh, I love that. That's cool. That's bizarre. And I said, but yeah, we sort of have to qualify it somehow. Like, I don't want to just wish for a surfboard. She said, well, what does a surfboard mean to you? Like, do you surf? I was like, nah, well, but it can keep you from drowning. And it was like, oh, okay. And she was like, I really like this. I was like, is this too silly? She was like, no, this is great. This is like a little turn on an otherwise kind of like a simple country song. I think writing with Heather on that song, I wouldn't have sort of had the confidence to say, dear Lord, I need a surfboard. But she was so thrilled with that result and the line that follows it that I was like, okay, well, that's it. That's the chorus. And then brought it to Tim, and we were able to finish it.
That was just fun to write, too, because you're like, you've got the bits about the landlord, and you've got the bits about I'll be there every weekend, not just Christmas Day. I thought that was a fun way to kind of nod it, because our Christian upbringing is like, you know, because we weren't the guys that were there. Only Christmas, we were there for like Sunday school, church every week, youth group every night. It was like the whole thing. You know, everybody's seen the billboards. It's always a weird, you're like, you're driving down the highway, you're like, this is the angle here? Like, you're gonna, like, brimstone on the highway, like, we're all hurtling by at 80 miles an hour, and this is your pitch? Like, this is, like, it's just bizarre. So, to take that and kind of turn it was really fun.
Right around Christmas time, I played a holiday show for the Libero Theater in Santa Barbara, and I learned Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, and I liked the chord progression, so I took it and started to write a song and landed on a chorus, and then scrapped the chord progression from Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas and ended up rewriting it, and that's what turned into that. And that's one of those weird songs where I kind of thought, I mean, everyone loves Jolene, you know, where you're like, I'm begging you please not to take my man. And I thought, well, what's like a take on that, you know? Like, what's that feeling like? And that feeling is like when you wake up from a dream where your love is happening and it might not be with the person you're married to.
Just that weirdness of coming back to waking up from a dream, and you're like, that moment of, wait, is that reality or is this reality? And let me try to figure out which one is and isn't. And I think that, like, confusing line between, like, dream world and real world is interesting, and, like, that one was really appealing because you're like riding this line of, like, everybody kind of knows what it's like to feel like you were trapped in that world a little bit, or feel like, wait, did I just do something? What just happened? I didn't have control of that dream, and I was up to something I shouldn't have been up to, or whatever, you know, whatever the case is. And like, shit, did that really just happen? Is my whole life about to crumble?
And I thought, boy, you know, everyone's kind of gone through this. Everyone, you can't reckon with your dreams. They just happen, and you do weird stuff in your dreams. And what if we pulled on that thread?
And it's cool because it's got that intimacy of just, it was the only song, I think it was the only song that Dave played and sang for the recording. So it has that very, like, right, like, whispering in your ear kind of quality to it, which is cool.
Don't tear my whole world apart, leave it in that dream. Don't go breaking nobody's heart, leave it in that dream. Don't tear my whole world apart, leave it in that dream.
Snow Globe came directly from a friend of mine who was struggling. He's a really positive guy. He's one of my closest friends, and I kind of rely on him in my life as a positive force. He's the guy that'll talk me down. And somewhere along the line in pandemic or whatever, he was hitting it depressed. I mean, we all have hit those bumps, and he hit it hard, and he's got a science background and sort of said, like, our species is just a cancer. You know, we're like cockroaches on the world, and it's hard to argue with that. And especially, he doesn't have kids and I do, and I'm trying not to think that way because I want my boys to just be safe and have love and joy in their life. But there is this sort of, you know, look at our species, look what we've done to the planet. And so I felt weird about some of the stuff that he and I were talking about, and I was like, he was just having a bad day. I was like, yeah, but it was probably a bad week. And then I just caught you on a bad day, in a bad week, in a bad month, and I was like, man, this year sucked.
Oh, I think I caught you on a bad day, in a bad week, in a bad month of a terrible year. Start hanging in there, that snow globe.
That one is cool, man. Like, depression is one of those things, especially in the last year, that I think like everybody's cooped up in their little worlds, and a snow globe is usually that thing that brings that spark of joy during the holiday. You know, you see a kid pick up a snow globe and it's always a wonder. There's always that wonder to it, and so to go into that and get like, what would it be like to be in the middle of that snow globe? And you're like, you can't really see through, you're getting shook up, you can't get out, you're trapped. I felt like that was a cool encapsulation of some of the stir crazy, pent up, you know, we're all in our little cabins, so to speak, everywhere. Like, I felt like that was a thing that, you know, hopefully people can relate to.
And it was funny because once we started to cut the song with the band, they loved the quiet, loud thing. And Tom Bukovac, again, who's one of the best guitar players in the world, at one point hit the note that sounds like Soundgarden. And everybody said Soundgarden. And Soundgarden is one of my favorite all-time bands, and it's one of Tim's all-time favorite bands. But, you know, it's about as far away from what we do, especially when we're playing acoustically or we're coming to Nashville to make a songwriting record, whatever, that you can think of. Like, it's just, their songs are so peculiar and so unique, and we very rarely can tap into the Soundgarden energy in our past, you know. Like, it's just something we like to listen to in the van, but we rarely get to play like that. At least that's the way I think about it. So once that note got hit, I said, let's go all in on these choruses and give it hell. And that, obviously, like, the band was super pumped about doing that because they get to rock and bring it all the way up and then all the way back down. And so yeah, that was really fun to watch that come to life.
The boat was in and out of season, hanging 10 on the wagon, caught a whiff of the dragon, ice fishing in a lake of red wine. How does that part turn around go there? I'm confused now.
It doesn't go up. Ice, right now. Ice fishing in a lake of red wine.
Carry the Lantern was, she was calling out in German from a balcony in London, opening line. And, you know, it's about the temptation of falling into old patterns. And you know, I spent a lot of years drinking and, you know, kind of wanted to get into that from another perspective, like further down the line away from having been sober, you know, and wanted to think about what that's like, with a little distance from the subject matter, you know. And, you know, just the idea that there's plenty of darkness out there, and you know, we just got through this big patch of American darkness, you know, this 4 years of misery and anxiety, and then into this pandemic. It's been tough, and I've just, you know, tried, I think, on my best day to bring light into the darkness of the world, and it's super hard to do that. It's easy to despair, And thankfully, when you have children, despair's not really an option. You have to kind of deal with that. And so I think, like, for me, or you'll pass it to them. You don't have to, but if you don't handle that despair, they're gonna feel it. And it's sort of your job to make sure they don't feel it. You're the shield for that despair. And so for me, it just feels like a lot of times you're carrying a little light and trying to light your own path and trying to light the path for your family and your friends as you go forward. And
we wanted something that you could sing along to, and that just felt like one that in the live, like taking that energy into our live, like the live business has been the fulcrum on which everything is like fixated. So that was cool, because it's like, that feels like one will be a fixture in the live set, and it's like something that I think it has that thing where it's like, it maybe has a little bit of a callback to The Shine, and I like that. It's like something that's a little bit familiar, but it's got its, its own personality, which will be fun to do. Like, I'm stoked to do that one live.
Little Wings was the first song that I wrote for my sons, Smith and Harrison. As a songwriter, there's nothing that changes your life more than having kids, or at least it hasn't for me. And so it felt heavy, the idea of like, well, I gotta write about this. I gotta write them a song. And I'll probably write them 50 songs. But it's a hard thing to do, to not be kind of like overly melodramatic or be just clever, like you gotta get the tone right. I mean, these are my kids, so there's like nothing more important. So the idea of writing a song about them is like kind of anxiety producing. And do you like the simplification thing? Like maybe does the lead go over a minor down to F, up to C, down to G, and then F, C, F, C. Good, get along, go swimming, fighting when you die. I'm gonna teach you that boys don't cry. You should spend your days fitting in. And so I think like one of the things that was helpful to me was like, I read in this Questlove book about creativity, where he was like, well, if you're stuck, like maybe write down a list of what you don't want your record to be. Maybe write down a list of what you don't want the song to sound like. And that might just prompt creativity of what you do want. I just thought, okay, well, why don't I just make a list of what I don't want them to feel, and what I don't want to teach them, the things I don't want to impart to my kids that were imparted to me or imparted to friends. And so I actually texted all of our sisters with Tim on the thread and said, hey, can you guys give me a list of all the things that you're hell-bent on not teaching your kids, that you've seen taught to kids? And they sent this long, awesome list, and a lot of it made it into the song. And so we sat down as like a songwriting exercise more. I didn't think it would work. And then we just kept refining it and refining it and refining it, and ultimately got something that I felt like was true. And I felt like it wasn't the last song I'm gonna write about the kids, because it's not necessarily about them. They're still developing as people, and we'll see what that's like. But this was more like, all right, I promise to try not to make you scared of, swimming in a lake of fire or something. I don't want to tell you that boys don't cry and all this kind of stuff that is just insane. That culture and parents in the 80s and all that stuff imparted to us.
It's also interesting to get that, like with Northstar and with Little Wings being the bookends of the record, it's I love the way that blood harmony works into that. That thread is really cool to me because it's songs that are about Dave's boys, and I love the fact that they're bookending. Like it's just, you know, the fact that they're twins, the fact that there's two of those songs on the, you know, I don't know. I love the kind of symmetry of that.
Rounding the bend on 10 years of being a solo artist and only having 4 albums, I'm like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
This is bullshit. The next 10 years, they're not going to be 4 albums. There's going to be a lot fucking more.
Yeah, that's the spirit.
Crank it out.
And we have this period of time that we just need to continue to use wisely.
Yeah, because even
We
if
should have been doing this before,
I know, but now
it is what it is.
Yeah, got to show up to work and work.
Well, one of the things that Tim and I talked about as we were wrapping up tracking was, I said, look, man, because we were talking about like how we tour on this record and what's going to be next. And I sort of reminded him, I was like, look, they say in psychological circles or whatever, that once in your field, once you gain the respect of your peers, you kind of can't get that much more happy or less happy. Like once you know your peers respect your work, that's like a big pivot point in your professional development or whatever. And I said to him, like, you know, I think that's happened amongst our peers already, you know, like the people that we sort of typically tour with and make music with, like we all have a mutual respect, and that is a wonderful thing. And I said, what we just did in the studio though is got the respect of not our peers. These are the biggest, most successful session and touring players in the world. You know, one of them plays in Bruce Springsteen's band, and he played on our record. The other one plays with Brandy Carlisle. You know, this, and Tom Bukovac is the best session guitar player around. So, all that said, we just punched out of our weight. Like, we got the respect of people that are not our peers. And so, remember that when maybe some of the best laid plans might not work out. You know, like remember this, remember writing the songs, remember recording the songs, and pretty soon this is going to be out of our control. It's just going to go out into the world. I'm old enough now that I've made enough records where somebody goes, this is going to be the one that is on the radio and is, you know, and I kind of laugh now when it gets said because I've heard it so many times. And it has just worked incrementally, like with each one we gain a little ground and maybe lose a little ground, and I don't know, like that stuff is truly out of your control, and that's fine. You know, like what's in your control is write the best song, take care of the people you love, record it the best way you can, keep it all compelling for yourself, and then share it. And beyond that, we'll see what the hell happens.